Chevra, how are you? Afreilich and Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph. Today it's Rosh Chodesh, the first day of Rosh Chodesh Adar Aleph, and Erev Shabbos Chodesh Parshas Mishpotim. How are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis v'ruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy physically and spiritually. As usual for the past couple of months, our hearts and minds are with our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, and we're adding tzedakah. So today, let's tzedakah Shem Karevis Zagula, and in general, Erev Shabbos, you meant to give tzedakah for 2 days. The Eibusher should help that in the schus of this tzedakah, Mashiach should come now. We'll say a prayer as usual. Mikimi meyafar dal, meyashpei sodim evyain. We said this today in davening as part of Hallel. Mikimi meyafar dal. He raises the poor from the dust. Meyashpei sodim evyain, lifts the destitute from the trash heap. As long as there's one Yid in Golus, and we're all in Golus, we're all dull. We're all dull. We're poor compared to Geula. Kolshkem Kalvachem in Golus itself. If even one brother or sister is a hostage, or even one brother or sister is suffering in general, then we're all poor. Whatever happens to one Yid affects the entire nation. And we're asking the Eibusher to bring Mashiach now. No Yid should feel any pain whatsoever on any level. The war should be over immediately. Similar to the saying, we say, Darkecha l'keinu l'harech apecha l'roim v'latoyim l'atoyim v'hilsi l'osecha. And then we say, Rei amidoseinu dalim v'reikim. Look at our situation, our conditions. We're dalim v'reikim, we're poor, we're lacking, and we need help now. Amen ken yiratzim. This week's parsha, Ve'ela Mishpotim, is, as everyone knows, the parsha which talks about civil laws, social laws. And in a way, you could ask a simple question, the paradox. Last week we had Matan Torah, Parshas Yisroi, V'yei Davar Sinai, the greatest revelation. It's called revelation, so it's spiritual, mystical, etc., celestial, call it what you want. And then the next parsha, Ve'ela Mishpotim, and we start talking about these mundane things. Two people get into an argument, they get physical and violent. We have a law about a Jew who couldn't pay back his theft. He had to be sold, or a loan, or his debts, etc., etc. So we have all these laws in this week's parasha about damages, properties, seemingly very mundane. Now the truth is, this paradox is already pointed out in the Aseret HaDibros itself, that here is that moment where Hashem himself, the greatest moment of revelation, Matan Torah, as we spoke last week, how the Alter Rebbe says that in chapter 36, how the revelation at Sinai was a preview of the ultimate of existence of the time when Mashiach will come. And what does Hashem reveal to us? Do not murder, do not sin, do not commit adultery. So over there also, it's brought out in all the commentators and all the Mefarshim. What's going on over here? We have the mitzvahs ben adam l'makayim between Hashem and man, and ben adam l'chavei between man, and they seem so paradoxical, extreme, from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low. So there's many explanations to it. That's not what I'm going to get into now. I'm just pointing out that contrast was already discussed in a certain sense last week's parasha. Over here too, Ve'ela, as everyone knows, the first Rashi, the word Ve'ela Vav connects the previous Pasha to the current Pasha. Ve'ela Mishpotim, why does it start with a Vav, Hamachaber, a Vav that shows there's a connection between Mishpotim and Yisroi? Rashi says, Ma'elu Misinai, Afelu Misinai. Just like the previous Pasha spoke about the revelation at Sinai, you should know also this Pasha, which talks about regular life, simple, mundane, day-to-day life, that also comes from Sinai. So in that itself, there's two aspects. Usually, and I think I've spoken about this before, the discussion is that there's man-made laws and there's God-made laws. That's the usual discussion on the Rashi. Ma'elu misinai, af'elu misinai. We have to know that the Jewish way of life is based on Hashem. In that itself, there's one point that we have to realize, that it's Nasa Koydel Manishma. First we have to follow instructions. It's based on fulfilling His will. So sometimes even if you don't understand it 100%, even in the social laws, there might be something that might seem to be something that doesn't 100% become acceptable in human sensibilities or human logic. Nevertheless, and there's much more to discuss on this point. But today, I want to emphasize a different aspect to that. And that is following another general question. Somebody could think to himself, he lives a life. Most people's time on a daily schedule is filled with mundane things. You get up, you daven, maybe you learn a bit in the morning, but then you go to work. You're on the subway, you're falling asleep, you're tired, you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with the Gentiles, you're not in a shul, you're not davening, you're not learning, you're not involved in spiritual activities. So sometimes you could have a yid who laments this sort of life, that his daily life, the majority of his time, is filled with something which he doesn't see how it's so important, how he's being connected to the Eibishter, etc. And this, ve'ela Mishpotim, ma'elu misinai, af'elu misinai. With this week's Parsha, we'll see from a pasuk later on in the Parsha, when we say that you're a man with a mission, it elevates everything in your life, because you have a centrality, and that centrality is that you're serving Hashem, and that everything is af elu misinai. When I'm going b'chol derechecha de'eu, and kol masecha yil Hashem shemayim, b'chol derechecha, in all your ways, it's called derechecha. When you're doing your simple things of reshus, the permissible. In other words, we're not calling it the holy. We're calling it eating, sleeping, simple things that on the outside seems to be very materialistic. Nevertheless, b'chol derechecha da'eu, you could come to know Hashem in that also. And this is the point, in a way. Ve'ela Mishpotim. You have to realize that Yiddishkeit is not only when you're in the shul, learning or davening, and when you're doing something spiritual. But guess what? Ve'ela Mishpotim. Asher tosem lifneihem. What comes right after Yisroi? Simple laws. Jewish living. Judaism lived. When we talk about the social laws and the civil laws, which seems to be like laws of every society, every healthy society has to have a justice system. We're saying, no, our justice system is something in which, whilst we fulfill that justice system, we are connecting with Hashem. And this gives a whole different joy to life that's totally incomparable. And now we'll connect it to a later on a pasuk. What I want to speak today, and one of the reasons I'm speaking about it is because it's related to me personally. This is a mimer. This is based on a Hasidic discourse that the Rebbe said 72 years ago. Shabbos Pashas Mishpotim Tovshin Yud Beis. My wife's grandfather was a famous chassid of Meshke Gerari, and he was a bacher in the times of the Rebbe Rashab, and he was a very, very big chassid of the Rebbe Rashab, of course, and of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and very close to the Frierdiker Rebbe. So, as with many chassidim, when the Frierdiker Rebbe passed away, as is usual by most chassidim, they don't automatically have the full feelings emotionally that they had to the previous Rebbe to the next one. It takes time. So the story, they say, is that he was by this Farbrengen, where the Rebbe said this mimer, and it was such an experience, such a deep, profoundly impacting experience, the way the Rebbe said this mimer, which we'll discuss today, that it was at that time he wrote his feelings, how the way the Rebbe said the mimer impacted him, and from that time, he really became a total, full-on chassid, also emotionally, fully, to the Rebbe. And I believe also that this mimer, this vort of the Rebbe, also is a principle of the whole Deir Shvi, our generation, and the Rebbe's approach to life. And that is later on in the Parsha, from Shishi, it says, Hine anechi shelech malach lefanecha. And Rashi right away says what's going on of it. Till now, we just discussed the laws, and all of a sudden it starts with blessings. So Rashi says a point, Kan is basur shasidim lachtoi, that the emphasis over here is anechi shelech malach lefanecha. It's going to be an angel, not me, myself. But then he still gives blessings, Hashem, and he still speaks about a matzah where he himself is involved, not only an angel. Anyways, so amongst those psukim, then the pasuk says at the end of Shishi, "Va'avadatem as Hashem alikechem," you will serve Hashem, uveirich es lachmecha v'esmeimecha, and Hashem will bless your bread and your waters. V'aseresi machlem mikebecha, I will take away disease. And then Shvi starts, and this is the Maimer, the Hasidic discourse that the Rebbe said 72 years ago. Loisia mishakela va'akora ba'atzecha es mispar yamecha mali. The pasuk says that there will not be a woman in your land that will miscarry or be barren. I will grant you the full count of your days. So the Hasidic interpretation of this verse means we're talking about emotions, because the children go on your emotions. The Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 3 of Tanya that the intellect is the mother's, the children is the emotions. Now when the verse says means that the emotions will never be stillborn or barren, meaning to say, if you want to be a full productive person with healthy emotions, the solution to that is through Es Mispar Yamecha Mali. What does it mean, Es Mispar Yamecha Mali? It's a certain meditation. And this meditation will guarantee that you should be productive. What is that meditation? The Rebbe explains, Es Mispar Yamecha Mali means the person has to meditate that Hashem filled your days with a mission, with a specific amount of time to fulfill the mission. And that every single second of your life, you have a mission. When you live with that purpose, which means you become depersonalized, it's all about the mission. And every single second you focus on the mission. Then, of course, because you stop thinking about whether you're in the mood or whether you're not in the mood. How do you feel? What is a certain service which is more befitting for you? What is not befitting to you? No, you're a soldier. And you have to fulfill the mission at all times. And that's the main focus. And a level of selflessness and transcendence that guarantees that you'll always do what you have to do. And the Rebbe then said that with this we can understand a famous Gemara. There's a Gemara that says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, before he passed away, he said, he was sobbing, and he said he doesn't know if he's going to Gan Eden or to the opposite. So over here, there's a famous question that Chassidus asked on this Gemara, and the Rebbe took it a step further. The question which was always asked on this Gemara in Chassidus was, why is he asking this question? He doesn't know where he's going. Obviously, he was a leader for Yidden for 40 years. He taught Torah for 40 years, and he was a tzaddik. So, why does he have this question any day based derech melichanesi? Because obviously, when a person says any day based derech melichanesi, it's not because now he's worried about reward or punishment. It means whether he was on the right side, like they say, the right side of history, or the wrong side of it. Whether he's on the right side and he was doing the right thing all of his life or not. So, why would he have such a question? How could he have such a question? That's one question. And this is how Chassidus explains it, and I'll say it right now. But then there's another aspect to the question, which the Rebbe answers and takes it a whole another level. The Rebbe's question is more, not how could he have such a question, but if he's worried about whether he's on the right side or the wrong side, why does he have the question now? What happened till now? Why is he asking before he passed away? If it's important to him to know if he's doing the right thing or the wrong thing, he should be worried about that question the whole time. So first we'll say what the answer in Chassidus is in general. One answer in Chassidus is that there could be something called oimekara, something like the subconscious, which means that even though a person, a tzaddik, could be busy, serving Hashem, and doing always the right thing, he still could have a question himself. Who knows? Maybe deep down on some layer on some level, on some subtle form, I have some evil which I did not elevate yet or didn't refine. It's called Oimakara or Dakasara. To give a simple example, today we have these ants or bugs that are insects or vegetables. And, when I was a kid, we weren't so sophisticated with this halacha. People ate strawberries, blueberries, lettuce. You put it into the water, you washed it, and it's good. Today, they have these magnifying glasses, whatever you call it, microscopes, that they're able to magnify something 500 times, and they see these bugs crawling in broccoli and lettuce, and I don't know what. And they say certain things you shouldn't eat at all. People that are very firm don't eat, some people don't eat strawberries, some people don't eat blueberries. I don't know what's going on. Bekitzer, the point is that when it's a big bug, and vegetables that have big bugs or insects, so it's easy to see those insects. They don't need a special inspection, and you can take care of it. But if you have something which is tiny, something which is small, it's much harder. And could you really, really know that we got rid of every single one? And therefore, when it comes to certain vegetables, that we can't be 100% certain that we got rid of every single one of them. So some people say, you shouldn't be eating this at all. So al derech zeh and avodas Hashem, similarly, sometimes a person can have something that could be very, very deep. And therefore, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was worried that maybe he only dealt with the obvious blemishes and flaws and imperfections of his character. But what happens if there were some things that were subtle, that he didn't realize, that he didn't deal with? Like I said many times, I don't want to get into it now. The idea of Avos Yisrael, the famous word. How come the first Beis HaMikdash, the Aveda, was the reason why it was destroyed was Gilarei, Shvichas Dam, and Aveda Zara, the three most grave sins, murder, idolatry, etc. And the whole Churban Golus lasted 70 years, but then we had another Beis HaMikdash. But now, the Golus that we have now is going on for the 1900 years plus. And the answer which is given is because when the Golus was because of Shvichas Dam and Avodah Zarah, so then it's did you or didn't you, and it's obvious. When it comes to those grave sins, there's no hiding away from it, there's no mistaking it. Did you or didn't you? But when it comes to something like baseless hatred, sinas chinam, everybody looks into the mirror and says, am I a nice guy? Of course. So therefore they never open up, they never own up to it, and therefore they never fix it. So that's one answer why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, because there could be something subtle, like we said before, in the subconscious. Another answer you can give is an answer which is given to another story in the Gemara with Chananya ben Tradian. And over there, Chassidus answers, he also didn't know if he's going to Gan Eden or not. And over there, Chassidus answers because he was worried that maybe everything he did was only what fit his profile. The reason why he learned was because he was the type of person that was the studious person, that had a more shchayra sort of temperament. He was more the studious type. So maybe everything he did in serving the Eibishter was because it fit his profile. It fit his disposition. So therefore he didn't really know, do I really serve Hashem? Do I do something where I have to stretch myself? Where I have to go out of my nature? And the answer was over there that he found out that he was able to go out of his nature. Over here too, you could say that maybe Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was asking the question, okay, I did the right thing, but did I really go out of myself? Was I really serving Hashem? Or was it all something that fit my character, etc.? That's the way Chassidus explained it until this Maimer that the Rebbe said, which by the way is also in the Likutei Sichos Mishpotim Daled Chelik Tezayin. And over here the Rebbe said an unbelievable word. The reason why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't have this question until now, before he's passing on, and he's bedridden, is because he didn't have time to think about the question before. Because he viewed his life that he's on a mission to carry it out. He's a shliach. A shliach doesn't have time to worry about what's going on in my nefesh. Which rank am I holding? There's only one thing in my life. And what's that life? Carry through the mission. That's it. And to even think about which madrega I'm holding, which level I'm holding, That's considered a me'ila b'shlichos. That's like somebody who betrays the mission, who rebels against his master. He's now going to think about his madrigas. He's now going to be thinking about this idea, whether he has some evil which is in the subconscious, because that's not really important for his mission. As long as you're a soldier, you have a mission to carry out. We could say, like, for example, if you're a soldier, you shouldn't be thinking whether you're a corporal, whether you're a lieutenant, whether you're a general, whether you're a major. You're a soldier. And a soldier has to do whatever the call of the hour is. That's the mission. I just want to learn one thing, that by us, we make a cheshbon nefesh every single night because that's part of the mission. So therefore we have to think about our actual, part of our actual job is to make a reckoning about our machshava dibur maisa. But Rabbi Yechel ben Zakkai wasn't about his machshava dibur maisa. It wasn't about fulfilling the laws. It was about some level in his soul. But the Rebbe wants every single one of us to think in a similar general overall perspective, overriding approach and attitude towards our life. We're all shluchim. So if we look at our lives as primarily on shlichos, so that overrides everything else. What's going on with you personally, what level you're holding, that's not really important. What's important is whether you're doing a job. You're given a post. Do not desert post. And not only that, that's what you should be thinking about every single second of your life. Not only every day, not only every minute, but every single second. When the Rebbe chazed his word, the Rebbe cried and was sobbing. And he had to stop a couple of times in the middle of the Maimer. And he put his head on his right arm. And he put his head down on the table. And everybody felt, and this is the Rebbe. The Rebbe was kochen sich, totally obsessed and permeated with this idea that he is a shliach. And there's many, many stories that attest to this point. And I'll say one story now. And this is what he wanted from all of us, primarily to be the principal catalyst and motivator, which galvanizes us to continue on and on to do what we're meant to do. This is how he viewed himself, and this is what he demanded of the Chassidim. So I'll just say three things that are connected to this. Number one is a story of the Mendel Futterfass, which, answering the question that we started in today's shir, Mishpotim, so a person looks at his life and he says, how am I able to feel totally uplifted? What transforms my entire life? My entire life becomes transformed when I look at myself that I'm a man on a mission. I'm on a mission of Hashem. And that's who I am. The Mendel Futterfass was in prison in the Gulag. And one day in his cell or in his cabin, he was surrounded by all these Gentiles, and they're all very morose and melancholy and sad. And this guy says, you know, I used to be a doctor, a physician, I was extraordinary, I was famous, everybody came to me, and I had very wealthy clients, patients. This other guy says, I used to be a lawyer. Another guy says, I was a general. You know, in Russia, by the way, it was the elite in particular that were sent to the Gulag and punished and suffered, etc. And they turned to the Mendel Futterfass and they saw that he's jovial and he's always happy and he's always positive. And they said, so how come you're happy? And he turns to them and he says, the difference between me and you is very clear. You people were defined by your position, by your circumstances. You were a famous lawyer, you were a famous doctor, you were a famous general, and now since the circumstances changed, so therefore you can't be happy. But me, my identity hasn't changed whatsoever. I was a chassid that was trying my best to serve Hashem. I'm still a chassid that's trying my best to serve Hashem. The address changed. So Hashem previously put me in one situation, in one set of circumstances, Over there, my identity was as a chassid who was serving Hashem in the business world or wherever he was. Now, I'm a chassid serving Hashem in the gulag. But there's no difference. And just like then, my happiness is because I'm merited to be someone who's in a relationship with Hashem, so too now, my relationship to Hashem hasn't changed, and I'm serving Hashem right now over here in these circumstances. So it's a very powerful story. That's one story. Another verse, first I'm going to say an answer from the Rebbe. Many of you might have heard this answer. Somebody wrote to the Rebbe an answer as following. I'm going to read you the words. Nenesi l'shmoya, I was very glad to hear, shemakir, that he recognizes shahu be'active duty. The Rebbe wrote the words active duty with Hebrew letters. I was very happy to hear that you recognize that you're on active duty. Shal pi zeh arei b'matzav de simcha umash nitzochin shogor befiv. So since you're aware that you're on active duty, so this warrants that you're on a joyous state, regularly singing a victory march. Wow. So the Rebbe is saying, as soon as you are conscious, you have this awareness that you're on active duty, so that you're like a soldier who's singing and going towards the front, or whatever your situation is, with a joyous march. Anyways, lastly, there's a story which to me is one of my favorite stories, and I'm sure I said it before, but I'm saying it again. There was a Yid in Paris in the 30s, his name was Leibish Heber, and he used to help the Rebbe. When they first got married, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, and they lived in Paris in the early 30s. The Rebbe used to give a shir in a shtibel, and this Leibish Heber used to daven in that shtibel, and he would drive, he had a car, and he helped the Rebbe sometimes going from one place to the other in certain things. One day he was driving the Rebbe, and the Rebbe looked very pale, and the Rebbe looked very tired. And he thought to himself, in his mind, the Rebbe needs a shtickle vacation. So he didn't say anything to the Rebbe. The next time he saw the Rebbetzin, he told the Rebbetzin, I think it would be a good idea if the Rebbe would take a vacation. That this Leibish Heber would arrange some weekend away or something where the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin could relax for a couple of days. Anyway, so the Rebbetzin told Leibish Heber, no, betracht azay, red ihr mit dem. And the Rebbetzin told her, if you think it's a good idea, you speak to my husband. You speak to the Rebbe. This was before the Rebbe was a Rebbe. But she told him, if you think it's a good idea, you speak to him. Anyways, so on another occasion, when he was driving the Rebbe around, and he brought up the subject, I noticed that you look sometimes exhausted, worn out, worn down, and maybe it would be a good idea if you could just go away for a couple of days. And he said, it says in the Torah. Anyways, the Rebbe got very, very serious, and he looked me in the eyes, and the Rebbe said, Ich hab nit kein Zeit. I don't have the time for it. Ich bin a shliach. I am a shliach. And the Gemara says, Chazaka shliach eis shlichusei. And the Gemara says, we have a principle that a shliach fulfills his shlichus. So here we see a story from the 30s, before the Rebbe was Rebbe, that he defines himself, shliach harebi anechi, shliach hakadosh baruch hu anechi. And therefore, every second of his life is accounted for. It's all part of the shlichus. And the emphasis I want to say today is the answer of active duty and the story of Reb Mendel Futterfass. And this is the connection today to Rosh Chodesh Adar. We have to remember, we're saying now a prayer that every Yid should have toiv v'nira v'nigla. Everybody should have whatever they need, not only the bare necessities, but the luxuries. Because we know what the Rebbeim said, Yiddish gashmis is ruchnis. By a Yid, his gashmis, his physical, is spiritual. Yid need lots of money to do lots of mitzvahs. Yid need to live long, es mispar yamecha amale, to do more good deeds for the Eibishter, for the world, etc., etc. And the Rebbe spoke about it, Ichas Yomim and Chaim Nitzchim, And we're living in an age where the Rebbe accomplished more and more toiv v'nira v'nigla, omen ken yiratzen. But at the same time, we have to remember that when is the Yiddish Gashmis Ruchnius? When it's all built on shlichas. This is the thing that ultimately will give you, every one of us, the greatest joy. Pekudei Hashem yishorim misamchei lev. The real simcha comes when a person does something that he can be proud of himself. The real simcha comes when a person thinks about those things that have eternal value. But the Eibishter made a deal, and like we see from the Torah in this week's Parsha also, when the Yidden do what they're meant to do, then the Eibishter does what he's meant to do, and gives them everything that they need, like B'nai Yechidish, Melech Malchem, Lochem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we ask of the Eibishter that even when we don't necessarily do what we're meant to do, every single Yid should have kol tuv selo, b'toiv v'anira v'anigla. A freilichen Chodesh, und a guten Shabbos, Mashiach, now.